Good morning. Welcome to Marketing and Mindset. I am so excited to get started this morning. We are going to be talking about how to start your podcast journey. We're going to have a special guest, and we're going to be pretty much sharing all kinds of amazing tips on starting a podcast and the benefits of it and how you can get started. My name is Vanessa Cooper. I'm a Pinterest marketing expert and content creator, and I am here every Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Eastern, almost every Wednesday. We've taken breaks now, and we always have guest speakers here. Most Wednesdays, we have guest speakers here that share on new topics related to either marketing or mindset, but those are always topics that help your business grow. And so if you haven't been in our room before or you're unfamiliar, we're a pretty laid back room. Our guest speakers usually pop in here and we ask them a few general questions and, just let them share all that info and value and information. And you're welcome to take notes. You're welcome to raise your hand at any point and ask a question. We love people to come up and ask questions and get their input and learn about their business. It's a great opportunity too to be seen in front of an audience as the room fills up. So if you're scared to ask questions, you can always go into the chat and ask your question there. But yes, the guest speaker should be popping in here any second now. I'm going to go check on her. But she is going to be going over a podcast. She is an expert in podcasts, I want to say. She's a digital creator and she's a podcast coach. So this is what she does for a living. So I'm really excited to hear what she has to say and share with us today. Give me just a few seconds to check in on her and see where she's at, and then we're going to get started very soon. And thank you guys so much for your patience in advance. Okay, she should be popping in here soon. While I wait for her to pop in, I'm going to go ahead and share with you my podcast journey and how I started and how it's been benefiting me. I actually never in my entire life thought that I would ever be hosting a podcast. And if you didn't already know, or you're new to this room, this is the Marketing and Mindset podcast. I record it inside of Clubhouse. And I do that for several reasons. One, I feel that it helps my guest speakers to have a live audience. Because sometimes people do ask questions and my guest speakers can speak directly to them and make, a one-on-one impact right there live. And I love being able to do that. And we've had that in the past a lot. I also like it because, I don't know. I really enjoy Clubhouse and I've been doing this for years. My Clubhouse bestie Connie is usually in here with me and she hosts a room with me and she'll be the one that asks the questions to the guest speaker sometimes. And we started doing Clubhouse. And what I noticed inside of Clubhouse is that when I started speaking, and I do Pinterest marketing, so podcasting is not my expertise. Pinterest marketing is my expertise. But I would go into these rooms and I would start talking, sharing value, sharing Pinterest tips. And I started actually growing my business on Clubhouse. I made connections with people who wanted to hire me. One of the best connections I got was a marketing manager who was actually working for some big brand companies that owned like a bunch of other companies underneath them. So they were able to, get me hooked to manage a bunch of their brands on Pinterest. So I have several accounts just from one connection that I made here inside of Clubhouse. And then when Clubhouse started offering the replays, I was like, hey, we're already in here sharing knowledge. We're already in here having guest speakers. Because what happened is, I can only speak so much about Pinterest marketing before I have to start charging because I'm saying too much, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to keep repeating the same topics. I wanted to make sure that this was a space for you guys to really grow your business and thrive and, just grow. And so once the replays were on, I decided, let me share this with the world. And so I decided to start converting those replays into podcast episodes. And it's very different. I know you guys have probably heard podcasts before where like there isn't a live audience. You're not inside of Clubhouse. It's very different than your typical podcast. I'm not on a fancy speaker. I'm on my phone. And so it's a little different, but I love it. It's been working out great. And we've got a ton of episodes. I think podcasts are very, very beneficial because of how it's reaching an audience through a different medium. Everybody's different. So some people are readers, they love to read. So having a blog is a great way to reach that audience of yours and provide value and provide content. And then there's video. Some people are very visual and they love to watch videos. But then there's your podcasters. And what's ironic about the fact that I host a podcast is that I don't actually ever listen to podcasts. I love being inside the conversation. And so I have a hard time just listening. I like to watch things. I'm very visual. And I can read too, because I sort of create a story in my head and it becomes visual in my head. But I have a hard time just listening to a podcast where I can't watch it for some reason. And it's also not me reading and sort of making the voices in my head. But this has been excellent for my business. So if you've considered starting a podcast and you're unsure on how to even begin, this is how I got started, was right here inside of Clubhouse. And if you're nervous, about doing it, it's just something that you can just slowly do over time. Just join some rooms, raise your hands, and kind of, get past your fears by sort of desensitizing to the fear of speaking in front of an audience. But yeah, so that's a little bit about my podcast journey and how I got started on here. It's growing. It's bringing me lots of traffic to my website. And it's helping my website rank, because for every podcast episode that I create here inside of Clubhouse, that to a blog post, I convert that to a video post, which is usually just, a video of a little audio thing. It doesn't necessarily have anything going on, but it's a way that I can expand the episode into a blog post for somebody to read, the podcast episode for somebody to listen to, the video for somebody to watch, and then it helps reach a larger audience. So, okay, our guest speaker's here. I'm so excited. I am going to butcher your name. I'm sorry. I probably should have asked you how to pronounce it properly, but is it Mahruk? Did I say that right?
Yeah, no, hi Vanessa. It's Mahruk. The way I tell people is always like your mom, Ma, like calling your mom Ma, and it's emphasis on that, and then chest piece Brook.
Okay,
So Mahruk.
Rook. Oh, I love that, Mahruk. Okay. If I screw it up, I apologize. I'm horrible with names. I'm going to work my hardest to get that. Mahruk. All right. I would love for you. I literally just spewed my mini podcast journey of how I got started here, how I do it on Clubhouse, and how I don't even listen to podcasts, even though I host one. But how it's really benefited my business. So, with that being said, I just want you to start off introducing yourself. Let us know who you are, what you do, and a little bit about how you got started doing what you do. I'm Vanessa, and I'm done talking.
Awesome. Thank you, Vanessa. This is Mahruk. And to start off, I would like to say, for me, this journey really, really started because I felt like, I would wake up every day, I would go to work, at work, I'll probably get lunch with a coworker, finish my day off, commute back, go on some online dating profiles, and then that was it. And then repeat, rinse, even though I had a really, really good job, right? Like something I really enjoyed doing. I just felt like there was something I wanted to do more. Like I wanted to express my creativity more. I wanted to be myself more. And I just didn't know how to do that. So for me, I was looking at different platforms, and podcasting was my way to go because for me, I was like, ooh, I like talking to people. And ooh, I want to network with more people. And I just want to do more in my life. I want to express myself better. I want to let the world know my story, but even more so, I want to learn from others. And what better way to do it through a podcast? Because I mean, I was one of those people who would always ask people for coffee chats, like, hey, would love to pick your brain. And the truth of that is that not every time if someone would say, yeah, sure, let's do it. Sometimes they'd be like, well, I don't really have time. But what I noticed was that with my podcast, those no's started becoming yeses more often. And I was just like, oh, this is cool. So that's kind of really just been my journey. I did not start thinking this would become a business or I would become a coach or I would do this. It was more so as a creative expression, as a hobby, as a way for me to learn more about myself and just learn more about the content creation industry. And the reason I chose content creation industry is because I was like, ooh, this is an industry that's blooming. This is an industry that's constantly getting better. And it's an industry that I have a lot of interest in. I love making fun videos. I love creating content, like when it's like no pressure on me. So I was like, you know what? I want to learn more about this. So that's kind of how I got started.
I love that. I love it. And I was just telling them, like, with me, I never in a million years thought that I would ever host a podcast. Never in a million years, because I'm not a fan of podcasts. And the reason is because I really like talking, and so I like being in the conversation. And I struggle listening to people talk when I can't just like budge in and and talk myself and give my 2 cents. I know it's terrible. But there's so many benefits. I have been able to benefit so much from my own personal podcast. I was telling them how when I create a podcast episode, I create a little YouTube video for it, nothing fancy, but at least there's a video so people can listen on YouTube if that's their platform of choice. I create a little blog post that kind of goes over the show notes of that episode, and then there's the audio itself for people to listen to that's in different podcast platforms. So to me, it's been such a great way to reach even a larger audience and to really drive traffic to my website. My website traffic has increased a lot since starting a podcast because I have just like constant content coming in, just a flow of fresh content for Google to be like, hey, this website keeps getting fresh stuff in it all the time, and and information and value. So I just wondered, what you feel when if someone ever came up to you and said, hey, I think I might want to start a podcast, but I'm not sure, like, what are the benefits that you have found with starting a podcast? If you could share with us the benefits for anybody who's kind of like unsure whether they should or not, or thinking about it, that would be awesome. I'm done talking.
Awesome. Thank you, Vanessa. This is Mahruk. And I think you were just so spot on with everything you just said there, right? You were saying that, podcasting was a way that, in a way, you express your thoughts. You didn't love listening to other people's, but you were able to get on the mic and express your thoughts. And this is a way that you were able to just create content by documenting what was already going on, and you repurposed it. Like, you broke that episode into YouTube, and I'm pretty sure, I know you're a Pinterest coach, in like Pinterest graphics, and Twitter. Like, you can do so much with that one piece of episode. So I think, what you're saying is spot on in terms of creating content. And what your question was is, if someone's like thinking about it, what should I tell them in terms of benefits? So I'll take a different angle to your question. So the way I really think about podcasts is, podcasting is a way of expressing yourself, right? A lot of people want to start a podcast sometimes for like, oh, I really want to become extremely popular, or, I want to earn like $3 million in 3 months. And, like, it's very, very, like, going after those like crazy salesy pitches that you see all the time. And that is why so many people, when they start a podcast, they actually don't continue it. There's this thing in the industry called pod fade, which means is like most podcasts that start, they don't go past episode 7. And that's a really, really crappy stat to have. And the reason for that is the reason I started a podcast is because I wanted to express myself. I didn't have any end goal in mind. The end goal became clear as I did more of my expressing, and my messaging became clear, and all of that. So anyone that's starting a podcast, I would urge you to ask yourself these questions. Do I have a story to share? Um, do I have something of value to share? And I will 100% say, yes, you do. You know, do can one person benefit from listening to me rant about something that I absolutely love, even if that's me? You know, these are the questions that kind of keep you in the podcasting game long term. Now, don't get me wrong, the networking, the repurposing of content, the monetization of podcasts, the sponsorship, that all comes. But if you want to start a podcast, and if you're on the brink of, okay, I don't know if I want to start one or not, Start one because you want to express yourself. Start one because you have a story that you believe people need to hear. Do it for those purposes. That would make it way more fun because you won't be worried about like, oh, let me look at my downloads, let me look at my stats. And let me tell you, in the beginning, it's best not to look at those and keep going forward. And as you become, your messaging becomes more clear and your thoughts become more clear and your voice becomes more clear and you just start having a lot of fun, that energy is very obvious to your audience. And opportunities will start opening up. People might ask you for speaking opportunities. People will invite you. People will ask you if they can work with you. So that will happen, but that shouldn't be your purpose. Your purpose should be, not to say that you should do this 100%, but in my opinion, the reason for starting a podcast should be to express yourself, to tell your story, to write about whatever you want, to do it for yourself, and eventually all the opportunities will come. And this is Mahruk. I'm complete.
I love it. That was so good. I That was such a good answer to my question. I have follow-up questions just based off of your answer. One, my first question is, why is it that you feel that people quit around episode 7? I just wondered, is it like a confidence thing? Is it because they looked at the analytics of the podcast and didn't see enough people were listening? Did they just quit just because of that? Maybe, like, is there a specific thing that would push somebody to quit when they do get started on their podcast journey?
Thanks, Vanessa. This is Mahruk. So, to answer your question, I would say like there's a lot of just statistical reasons for pod fade, right? But in my research and with my like speaking to people, I'm a nerd. I love like just like talking to people about podcasts and what's going on. Um, I truly feel it's, and this is not like a hit on anyone, but so many people, again, tell people, so many coaches out there or gurus or experts out there, they will tell people, oh, you know what? Podcasting, all you have to do is record your episode and then you're done. And then you're going to get a million followers. And I genuinely feel they set the podcaster up for failure because they don't tell them the truth. And the truth is, the podcasting does take time. You know, there is setup time. But guess what? Everything takes time. Everything that you will build will take time. So if someone wants to use podcasting as a get rich quick scheme, you're already losing. This is not the place. Well, actually, there's no place. So you're going to be scammed one way or the other. But podcasting is, think of it as a way of like building your brand slowly and steadily and having the patience to know that this is evergreen. People can go back, listen to your episodes from 2 years ago. People can do that. People can uh, feel like they're binging all your episodes all together. And it's all free information for them. So coming back to your question about pod fade and why people stop, I genuinely believe it's because they don't start for the right reasons. They start because they believe this will be some get rich quick scheme or I'll get super famous. But if you really start, and people who have continued, and actually Brene Brown, I don't know if you follow her, I'm a huge fan. And she literally said on one of her podcast episodes, nobody that's famous today became famous because they wanted to be famous. Nobody. They were just doing what they really loved. They were just expressing themselves. They were iterating their message. Even if you go listen to Brene Brown's first podcast episode, you will notice how her message has changed. Someone as big and as established as her. So, podcasting is a way to get your voice out, to get your story out, to express yourself, have fun, meet new people, and the opportunities come. But if you feel like you're getting into the game because, oh, I'm going to get all these opportunities, you're getting in it for the wrong reasons. And yes, pod fade will be the reason you're going to be out very soon. That would be my answer. This is Mahruk and I'm complete.
I love it. Thank you. That was a good answer. And it is about just your intentions with starting it. I honestly didn't even think that there were actual people who thought starting a podcast was some kind of get rich quick scheme. Like, I can't even imagine. And maybe because I know how it works. I actually, before I started doing this, I worked as well. I'm doing it now currently, but I'm a podcast coordinator for one of my Pinterest marketing clients. And so she's been doing it way longer than me, you know. So I know the hustle and the work and all that she has to put into it to have grown her podcast to where it's at. And then how much work goes into monetizing it too, and actually benefiting from it. It's definitely not something that is going to be like an overnight thing. So that's just wild to me that people would even think that. And I love that answer that you said. It's really about why you started it. That's really good. I had a question, and this is honestly just from me never really listening to podcasts much, but to me, I know that people can go on a podcast and just sit there and just talk and share value. We've done it here now, like one Wednesday a month. Either me or my clubhouse bestie Connie, who couldn't make it here today, she will talk about one of her expertise for like 30 minutes to 45 minutes, and I'll talk about Pinterest marketing for about 30 to 45 minutes. And it's really just me talking the whole time, unless somebody like asks a question. Is there a difference, or is one podcast better than the other when it's just somebody sharing ideas or telling a story or sharing value versus two people, or even more than two people, multiple people having a conversation? Like, I have guest speakers here because I want all those different topics of knowledge that I don't have, like I don't have this podcast journey knowledge at all. I just have my personal experience. So, I have an expert like you here today. And that's how I do my podcast. I have a guest speaker. Occasionally it's just me talking. Is there any benefit between having somebody that you're interviewing for your podcast or you're talking to, or maybe it's the same person every episode and you guys just go back and forth and talk, versus you by yourself just sharing knowledge? Does it matter, or is it really just a preference of the audience? I'm Vanessa and I'm done talking.
Thank you for that question, Vanessa. This is Mahruk. I will say that the only thing that really matters is which one lights you up the most. Which one are you having most fun doing? So, and I say that is because the audience can feel your energy when they're listening to you. I mean, yeah, it's audio only, and sometimes obviously the podcasts of videos as well, but they can sense that energy. So if you're someone that actually enjoys the solo, like you said, like I just don't like talking to people, but I just like ranting and just coming on and doing solo shows, that energy will be very obvious to the audience. If you're someone who's just loves guest podcasting, like sorry, just not guest podcasting, but guest interviewing on podcasts. If you're someone who loves that, the energy will be obvious to your audience. Same thing with people who have the same co-host. The reason why those co-hosts that become super popular versus those that don't is you can tell when the co-hosts are having fun, when they're just kind of vibing off each other, they're just having that conversation. Those are the podcasts that become really popular. The content comes secondary because, again, there's some co-hosts that are vibing off each other that are true crime content creators. There's some that are comedy content creators. So content is secondary. It's their energy. So for me, I always say, like, obviously, like, your audience will tell you where their mind's going, which might tell you where your energy is more than anything else. And I think where I'm going with this, Vanessa, is, it's so important to see what lights you up. What do you want to do? Obviously, if you want to try something new and mix it up, and it's different if you're trying something new and you're nervous in the beginning, and you don't have the same energy, that's different. But if you've kind of like done solo interviews for a while and you love it, and you're trying interviewing guests and you're just like, ooh, I'm nervous about it because it's the beginning, that's not the same thing as not having the same energy. But if you've done that guest interview for 10 episodes and you're like, oh, this is so boring, I would just rather talk myself and blabber, the audience will know, and that's where you will get that feedback. So that would be what I would say, is do something that obviously you enjoy, but also keep in mind that it's okay to challenge yourself somewhat, because at times when we try something new, our brain also wants to keep us in the familiar. So notice that difference between, okay, my brain wants to keep me in the familiar, I don't want to do something new, versus this really is something I do not enjoy. And I want to go back to one format over the other. Or you can say, I've done so many solo episodes, but it's kind of getting boring. So I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to bring different co hosts, or I'm going to bring the same co host. And stuff like that. So again, you can have more fun doing that as well. So just going back to your initial question, making sure that I'm clearer, it's the format of the show does not matter as much as how much energy you have fun doing it. But I do recommend experimenting with different formats because A, you'll find out something that you might have even more fun doing versus less. And second, like I said, podcasting provides clarity. It provides clarity on who you are. It provides clarity on your message. It provides clarity on what you want to do. And so it will provide you clarity on what kind of formats you enjoy and what you need to learn about yourself and how you want to grow. This is Mara, and I'm complete.
That was great. Great answer. And I agree. I agree with what you said about it because I know every audience is different anyways. You know, some might want to just listen to one person, some might want that different guest speaker and the different topics, you know, or to hear the conversation go back and forth. So it's true. It's whatever works for you. And it's funny that you said that because, you know, me and Connie were in here together every single Wednesday for a long time. Then we both started almost getting burnt out every week, just us two talking. And so then I started introducing guest speakers, you know, to kind of give us a break of just talking. And we were doing it for like almost 2 hours straight when we first started. I'm not even joking. Then we weaned it down to 1 hour because we were like, okay, 2 hours is a long time to just sit here and talk. We got other, you know, we got businesses to run. And then we started introducing guest speakers to bring in and talk on new topics to kind of give us a break to have somebody else talking. And then after doing that, you know, we decided because I do a blog post for every episode and a video and all that, it started becoming a lot because again, I have another business that I run, you know. This is almost like my side hustle on top of my main business. And so, you know, I was like, I need to cut back on guests and just do like 2 guests a week, take a Wednesday off. And then one Wednesday a week, me and Connie decided that we were going to each take turns. That way, 1 month I take 2 Wednesdays off, 1 month she takes 2 Wednesdays off. And then it would just be ourselves in the room by ourselves. The other person might be in there, but muted the whole time, like listening if they wanted to or not. And then, you know, one Wednesday I'll just talk about Pinterest marketing and she'll talk about either Instagram marketing or mindset because she's a mindset coach. And so it's funny because even though we initially just talked for like 2 hours straight, changing it up and then me being in the room by myself talking, I was like, oh my gosh, I was so nervous my first time. And it was so funny because it's been years that I've been doing this and I was still nervous. I was like, oh gosh, it's just going to be me talking the whole time. You know, and I was like panicking. And then, you know, I had to get my mind straight, and I'm pretty good at talking myself out of fear, and was like, listen, you're talking Pinterest. Like, I can literally talk about Pinterest forever with no issues. You know, I can go 2-3 hours straight and just teach you everything about Pinterest that you need to know. So, you know, that helped me calm down. But it's true that you should try new things. Like I had to adjust how I manage and run this podcast to fit my life and to make sure I didn't get burnt out. And so, you know, whether you have a guest speaker or you don't, or you do it on your own, I agree 100% with what you said to, you know, change things up if you need to and try new things to make sure that you're doing this and you're joyfully doing it so that people don't feel that energy. Um, but I had another question for you that I think is really important. This is a question that people ask and question and wonder about and are undecided about and overthink it forever and ever when starting a business is your niche or niche, whatever you call it. When it comes to starting a podcast, do you need to have a very clear niche topic that you're going to be discussing every single time? Can it be just a general podcast where you have all kinds of different topics? Do you need to actually niche down to a very specific niche, or can it be general? What are the benefits of either or? I'm Vanessa and I'm done talking.
All right. Thank you, Vanessa. This is Mahruk. And thanks for sharing your podcast journey and how you were willing to challenge yourself and change it up. And, you know, I loved how you spoke about burnout because that is real. And I loved how both you and your podcast co host or Clubhouse co host pivoted and realized, okay, this isn't working for us. So let's do something different. I think that's very important for everyone to hear because everything nothing is permanent and everything can be changed depending on how you want it to be. So I love that you mentioned that. The other thing that I want to address before I answer your question is you mentioned earlier, like, yeah, different audiences prefer solo, different audiences prefer guests. And for that, like a lot of times people come to me and they say that like, I think people in the audience prefer guests and I love doing solo. And to that, I always say, your people will find you. If if you love doing solo and there are people and you realize I really hate interviewing guests, and but I'll do it once in a while, but I really hate it for like a recurring format. And some people are like, but that's the one I like, then those are not your people, right? It's so important to not be like, okay, well, these two people really want this from me, so I'm going to do it. Like, just make sure you stay patient, and you find, and through patience you will find the right people, the right tribe, the people that actually want to listen to you, the format that you prefer and the way that you are. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that before I move on to this question. So the niche question, or the niche, depending on where you are, which that border you are, is very interesting, because yes, I get that so much too. Should my podcast be a general podcast, or should I focus on one topic? And you know, I recently had a client, and we were working together, and he said something like, Mark, I'm an actor, and I'm a exec, at a huge corporate company, and I'm also a speaking coach. So I don't know what I should focus my podcast on, because these are like three very different topics, like acting, speaking coaching, and being a corporate exec, like learning how to manage organizations and all of that. And I told him, I was like, okay, what is your idea of a niche? And he was like, well, something specific, something focused. And I was just like, well, I don't know anything more specific than an actor that also does speaking coaching, that also is a corporate exec. So I don't know anything more niche than that. And it was almost like he was just like in another space. He's like, oh my God, that's so true. So to answer your question, I think you are your niche, right? I do think that when you're starting off, and if you like, don't know if you what your business idea is or what your podcast idea is, you can start more general. You can start more general and see, okay, what do I actually like talking about? What is it that actually lights me up, lights my soul on fire? What is it that I'm enjoying creating content about? And then eventually, when you start figuring that out, you'll obviously start becoming more focused, because you're like, actually, I thought I loved talking about this, but I don't. Like, for example, I have played cricket for Team Canada. I am crazy about cricket. I'm so passionate. But through podcasting, I learned that I cannot podcast on cricket. Like, I have so much of cricket already in my life that I don't want to talk about cricket. I don't want to talk about cricket on podcasts as well. But I wouldn't have learned that had I not done it. So when people are starting out, and again, unless they have like, something that they're already doing and they want to start a podcast on top of that, like just to promote that business or product or something. And even for that, I always say start with something more general, try everything out, and then you can start becoming more focused on what you want to speak about. And even then, you can start mixing it up. Like, you can start with, like, for example, when I started the podcast Spicy Chai, a podcast for content creators, everyone told me I'm not niche enough. Oh, what do you mean content creators? Content creators is so huge. You need to like make content on specific stuff. And I was like, but no, I don't want to, because I want to learn about creation on all platforms. And I just did. And I'm like, I want to learn about content creation on all platforms. So I thankfully did not listen to that. And, obviously right now my podcast is ranked really highly. People sense the energy, people love it. And it's because I didn't listen. And now, obviously, because I have done content creation episodes on each different platform, I realize podcasting is my favorite platform. And so I have focused more on my content around podcasting because of the journey. But my podcast is still Spicy Chai, a podcast for content creators. Like, it's literally for all content creators. So when people talk about niche or not, I say you are your niche, and don't be scared to go general first to learn about your message. And if you want to become more focused, you can. If you don't, keep doing what's bringing you joy. And eventually you'll start realizing that people are attracted to that. I'm Mark, and I'm complete.
That was excellent. That's actually the advice I sort of give when it comes to Pinterest marketing, when people are not sure, because there's so many type of pins you can do on Pinterest. You can do static pins, you can do video pins, carousel pins, you can do idea pins. And a lot of people come to me and be like, which one should I be doing? And I literally tell them that same answer, but in like Pinterest talk, I'll be like, do them all, do all of them, and then see which one your audience likes the most, which ones they're engaging with the most, which ones they're interacting the most, and then do more of those. So same answer when it comes to your podcast, niche is like you said, talk about whatever makes you happy and then see what your audience is liking the most. That's really good. I like that. I like that question. And I love how you're focused a lot in these answers. And it's funny because I never, maybe because my brain is very marketing and strategy and, you know, and I guess it's similar, but I just never thought about how what really makes a podcast successful is the passion behind it, really. It's going to be more about not the topics or what you're specifically talking about, but how you talk about it, how joyful you are on the topic. If you're excited going back and forth and talking about this versus being like, kind of like bored or not into it. And like you said, that your audience feels that energy. So that was just, it's such a great answer. So, for people who are thinking about, and this is my last question, and then we're going to share your link and, talk to people about where they can connect with you. For anybody who is wanting to start a podcast, they're listening to this episode, they're like, okay, you know what? I think I do want to start a podcast, but they have no idea where to even begin. They have no idea where to start. They have no idea what to do. Do they need to buy a fancy microphone? Can they record on their phone? What recording platforms to use? Are there any basic go-to things that a brand new person in podcasting needs to try, or maybe even a resource or a website or anything that you recommend for somebody who's brand spanking new to podcasting that wants to get started, and maybe even a resource for anyone who's nervous. Maybe they get a little nervous about even talking on a podcast, and that's their challenge with even getting started. I guess my question is, one, how do you help someone who's too nervous to get started? And two, what is even the first step when you've decided that you want to start a podcast? While you answer that, I'm going to go ahead and pin your link. I'm Vanessa, and I'm done talking.
Awesome. Thank you, Vanessa. I was going to say that to answer your question first, when people are nervous, what they can do. So it's okay to be nervous. Sometimes anytime we do anything new, our nervous system will react, or we're not used to it. So for me to say, oh, just get over it, take action, I think it's just ignoring the fact that different people have different nervous systems. And it's okay to feel that way. It's safe to feel that way. And it's normal to feel that way. I still at times get really I wouldn't say nervous, but I do when I'm like really let's say on a if I have a guest that I know I took me months to get on my show, I definitely feel those jitters still. And I've been doing this for years. So it's a normal response. And for those people who are nervous and they're like, I really want to start a podcast, but I'm too nervous, what I always tell those people, and if this is you and you're listening, what I would tell you is record but don't share. So get into the habit, get your nervous system comfortable with the idea of recording. Just put it on a voice note, create a WhatsApp group with yourself, or with your best friend and who you really trust. And just start sending them or yourself voice notes. And that's it. That's how you can start and start getting your nervous system ready and prepared for like, okay, I'm just recording stuff and I'm just sending it to myself. And then you can start taking the next step of sending it to maybe two or three of your trusted friends and saying, this is just my rant for the day. The idea really is to get more comfortable with the idea that you're doing something that's different. And then eventually then you can take the next step of like, all right, I'm going to publish this podcast, but I'm not going to tell anyone about it. So you can start publishing but not telling anyone about it. And then eventually you can start talking about it with people. So you don't have to go from zero to let's start a podcast. If you are nervous and if it does bring on those jitters, you can have those small baby steps in the middle that can really help prepare your nervous system to get over those jitters. That works for some people. For certain other people, sometimes it's just getting behind a mic and just talking. and publishing it, and then that getting done with, never listening to it again, and just moving on for the next episode. That works for some other people. So it depends on what kind of person you are. I would do one or the other and try what works for you. So that was the answer to what if you're nervous. And to go back to your answer, if someone's really starting something fresh, you've decided that, hey, I want to start a podcast today. I have no clue where I want to start. So let me tell you, Google is awesome with resources. Like everything that you need to start a podcast is available through YouTube or Google. So if you want, you can just search. But that being said, I will also say that if you click on the link tree, I have a free 13-minute training video. It literally has the 4-step roadmap to starting your podcast if you have no clue where to begin. And if you don't know, if you don't want to spend like thousands of dollars on a crazy mic, like the mic that I usually use for my podcast is like under $200. So you don't have to spend a lot of money. And that training has all of that information, which mic to use, which host to go for, well, or the ones that I recommend at least. My experiences could be different from other people, but I highly recommend just watching that free 13-minute training video. Um, and the other thing is, I have recently created a podcast cheat sheet for everyone. So if you want a Google Doc copy of that, you're free to DM me on LinkedIn, just saying podcast cheat sheet. And the instructions are also on the link tree. And I'm happy to send that to you as well. So I really, really appreciate your time and listening today. So I definitely would love to share as many free resources as I can possible. And I'm
Awesome.
Mark, and I'm complete. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing with us today. It was awesome. It really was. I hope that this helps somebody who's, like I said, kind of on the fence about starting a podcast or not sure why they should or if they should, kind of get an idea of what it's all about and just kind of give them a first step to getting started. Love that you have that, that training on getting started. That's excellent. Make sure if you're listening to this, that you check that link out. It'll be on my website when this is published at networknessie.com. So make sure you check out all her resources. And just thank you so much, Mahruk. Hopefully I got that right, Mahruk.
Oh no,
For
Mahruk.
Mahruk. I'm terrible.
Yeah,
Mahruk.
you're good. You're good.
Mahruk.
Yeah.
I'm terrible with names. I think anyone who listens to my podcast already knows, like, oh gosh, Vanessa's gonna butcher it. Vanessa's gonna butcher the name because they already so terrible with it. Unfortunately, it's just a characteristic of mine. I'm terrible. But thank you again. I really appreciate you coming on here today and just sharing value and knowledge and information. If you could no, you already let them know they can contact you in LinkedIn. I guess that's your platform of choice for people to reach out to you. Is that correct?
Yeah, they could do LinkedIn. They could contact me on Instagram. If you click on the link that Vanessa will have in the show notes or in the clubhouse right now, you'll see that it has multiple links to my training video, my podcast, my LinkedIn, my website. So you can contact me. LinkedIn is my platform of choice. That being said, if you're more of an Instagrammer, you're welcome to DM me on Instagram. So it all depends on where you want to contact me. So.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you again for being here. I'm going to go ahead and shut down the room. Just want to
Yeah.
remind everyone
Before
here.
you do that, Vanessa, just wanted to say, you did say that you're running a full-on business and you're doing this clubhouse room as a side hustle. So I just wanted to say kudos to you. That is a lot of work, and it's just wanted to make sure I appreciate that. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you so much for being such an exemplary person for everyone about with everything you're doing. So even when you're telling me how you butcher names, I'm like, oh, so that's probably one thing that you're not doing right now. You're doing so many crazy things, and you're really womaning it all. So I just wanted to make sure I say that. So thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for creating this space for others to listen in on. And thank you for showing up in the world. I
Of
appreciate you.
course. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It is a lot of work, but it's something that I just find so much value and not just for me, but just for the people who come here and listen, and all the followers who subscribe to the podcast as well. So it means a lot to me for you to say that. Thank you so much. Of course, my Clubhouse bestie isn't here to get some credit. She's here with me all the time, co-hosting and putting work into it as well. So it's our baby, and it's our place to help people as much as we can in any way that we can. So I really appreciate you saying that. I'm gonna go ahead and start shutting down the room. Again, we are here on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Eastern. We do take a Wednesday off. I try to stay updated in my profile here in Clubhouse to let you guys know, when we'll be back, so that usually the first Wednesday of the month we're not here, and then every other Wednesday we'll be here with either a guest speaker or us just sharing knowledge and tips. So hopefully we'll see you guys next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern. And this is the Marketing and Mindset podcast that you were listening to here inside of Clubhouse. And thank you so much again for joining us. I'm going to shut down the room here in 5 seconds. I'm closing it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.